What is this controversy about foreign policy? Help me understand these authentic political issues. And the teachers who did that in a way where kids were talking with one another in high quality discussions for which kids and the teachers had to prepare were getting a huge payoff, both in terms of kids loving these classes. I mean, we have interviews that will make you cry. I mean, kids are like, I love coming to this class. This is the only class I have all day where anyone asks me to A, talk, and B, what I think. And we know that's true because when we shadow kids all day long in high school, we know that in almost all classes, kids don't say a single word. 90% of kids are quiet 90% of the time. In these high-quality civic education classes that we focused on in the political classroom, that was not the case. We saw teachers knowing how to engage kids in these high-quality conversations. And not only did it pay off in terms of the short term, but it paid off in terms of the long term. And let me just end with this. When we were looking at the interviews with the kids 4 years after they graduated from high school, so think about that. How much change you go through in the 4 years after high school. And so we have these elaborate phone interviews with the kids. And one question was, what do you remember about Mr. Healy's class? So Mr. Healy's class was 4 years previous. And in these high quality classes, kids had unbelievably specific memories that were accurate because we had the field notes. We had kids saying things like, I remember that legislative simulation when we had that big debate about whether or not abortion should be legal. I remember that Clara was totally opposite me, and I just couldn't believe she was. Although the more I listened to her, she actually had some good ideas. And I'm like, give me a break. You're remembering an actual kid's name? We went back to our field notes because we had been in the school that day. Guess who was in the class? Clara. So that was so unusual to me because I can tell you that that's not typical. It's not typical for people 4 years later to be able to think back to school and to be able to say with specific detail, this is how this teacher influenced me. And the other thing that we learned from all of the kids, the one thing that made the most difference was not who else was in the class, although that matters, peer pressure, huge. Was not how many years of social studies they took. Was not the quality of the textbook. Was not whether or not they saw really good films. Was not whether there was a whiteboard in the class. Was not whether there were 35 kids or 27 kids. The thing that really mattered was how good the teacher was. Teachers who were really engaged in high quality instruction got so far with kids compared to teachers who weren't. So I came away from this study kind of full circle. When I went into teaching in 1979, I thought, you know, maybe this is something to do, not just to be, to quote David in that wonderful talk, David, and congratulations. I'd like to be in your class. It sounds like a cool place. But I thought that when I went into teaching too in 1979, and when I finished this book, literally 2 months ago, the very last paragraph I was writing on a train from Boston to New York, and I ended it talking about how important teachers are. And I so moved myself, I had to go buy a glass of wine to calm down. So I was going to say,